We all love our power systems, right? Some of us think Nen is the best, others think Cursed Energy is the best, but today I want to talk about what I think is the greatest one ever written. If power systems were a Venn diagram, this one would be right in the middle of it. It's taken the best aspects of the best power systems and combined them all together to create something truly amazing. Bending, introduced to the world in Avatar: The Last Airbender, has, in my opinion, turned out to be the greatest and most well-written power system in all of fiction. So let's discuss why that is. The biggest reason why it's so good is because it's consistent and easy to understand. There are 4 nations, each with its own element: water, earth, fire, and air. These are big base elements that everyone is familiar with. Everyone knows what they are and what they can do to people and the environment if used as a tool or a weapon. And this is even before watching the show. This is just from your experience living on Earth. Also, the way the show sets it up is very important. Besides the intro itself, which tells you what it's all about right off the bat, some of the first lines in the show are Katara and Sokka arguing about bending, which lets the audience know what it is and what it is not. We immediately are told that bending is not magic. Some people can do it and some people cannot. It's based on genetics. Now, obviously, because of its age rating, Avatar, at least The Last Airbender, limits what it can show on screen. In The Legend of Korra, these restrictions were lifted just a little bit, but ever since the beginning, we've always had an idea of their true potential. And again, the writing comes in with implications and stuff. One of the best examples of a style with implications that were later expanded on is airbending. When I watched The Last Airbender growing up, I always thought that air was the most harmless of the elements. What could it really do besides help Aang fly, move, and push people around? Obviously, airbender culture shapes this perception, but what really changed my mind about the element, at least a little bit, was when the gang comes across Monk Gyatso's skeleton. Originally, I thought he fought the firebenders off in a sealed room and their bodies were all left there to rot over the years. But later on, I read a theory about him basically sucking all the air out of the room at once, turning the whole place into a vacuum where nobody could breathe. We actually saw something like this in Korra with the sauciest airbender of all time, Zahir. I don't need to say much about what the elements do on screen. You can see that for yourself. Fire burns, water drowns, or freezes, and so on. So just to sum it up, I believe that the greatest asset any power system can have, especially when you first introduce it to an audience, is simplicity. You have to make sure that everyone gets the gist of it in general as fast as possible. Now let's talk about the second biggest factor, consistency. Now for this video, I'm mostly sticking to The Last Airbender because in general I think the power scaling goes way up with Korra. In The Last Airbender, the elements only get temporary boosts at certain times. Obviously the Avatar state grants the Avatar, who is one person, insane abilities compared to anyone else. The clearest examples for normal people are the full moon granting waterbenders greater power, and Sozin's Comet doing the same for firebenders. These two conditions, when activated, bring about amazing showcases of power and skill, especially Sozin's Comet. Sozin's Comet brought about one of my favorite fight scenes in all of Avatar, or in animation, or probably in fiction. Getting back to my point about consistency, without these special conditions, bending is generally the same across the board. As much as I'd like it to exist, a pure lightning bender, basically a Cole McGrath, would tear Avatar's world building apart as soon as he was introduced, or perhaps as soon as he was even alluded to as a possibility. There are certain things that no character, regardless of how gifted or blessed he or she is, would ever be able to do. Even Aang, as the Avatar, can't launch lightning attacks himself. He learns to redirect lightning, sure, but he can't do what Ozai or Azula can. He doesn't learn to summon and launch it himself, as far as I remember. Plus, lightning never loses its lethality. Even at the very end of the show, it's a one-shot KO. Nothing in Avatar ever loses its place on the hierarchy, if that makes sense. Now let's move on to the next big factor that makes bending so special, and this is one of my personal favorites. One of bending's greatest assets, possibly its greatest asset, is its physicality. Every element is connected to a unique and easily recognizable martial art. These are all kung fu styles, which means the overall sense of connection and world building is still intact, but each individual style is very different, and it's clear who uses what at first glance. These are all real-world styles too, which is interesting and helps add to the sense of believability. You've got Hung Gar for earthbending, Shaolin for firebending, Tai Chi for waterbending, and Bagua for airbending. And all of these styles share characteristics with their element, but I'll get back into that later. Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, aka Bryke, added onto this further by giving certain characters their own unique martial arts style so that they'd stand out. The most obvious example is the greatest earthbender of all time. To compensate for her blindness, and obviously to make her more interesting, she uses Southern Praying Mantis Kung Fu as her personal style. But what's especially interesting to me is that she doesn't teach Aang her style. That is tailored to her use. She teaches Aang basic earthbending, which is still very rooted, it's still that hard style sort of thing. So this is just one instance of these personalized styles being add-ons, not replacements, for the base martial arts, the base power system. The base power system of bending is always there. It's never uprooted. Another example of this is Azula. When she first shows up, she uses this two-fingered striking style. I don't know what it is. This and the blue flames are great bits of character building. Because bending is so physical, and because each style fits a certain personality type, we know she's a perfectionist and has incredible technical skill as a firebender. And later on in Book 3, her form breaks down as she does. Body language reveals character, which is why having bending be connected to the body, to movement, is such a good decision. Another thing you'll notice is that each bending style fits a certain personality type. This is why Aang has trouble learning earthbending. There's also a massive payoff for Zuko, my favorite character, that connects directly to his bending style. In Season 1, Uncle Iroh says that power in firebending comes from the breath. Obviously, as part of his redemption arc, Zuko learns to let go of that anger, but this also affects his bending. He stops wasting energy and becomes much more efficient. The dancing dragon also helps with this. But this goes back to my point about the power system being directly connected to the world and to the characters. In the end, this change in how Zuko fights is really what helps him win against Azula in their final Agni Kai. Azula losing her mind plays a big part in how that fight turns out, but it's not the whole thing. Remember that Azula was still a serious threat to both Katara and Zuko. She still had access to her blue flames, meaning she still had extreme control over her firebending. Another aspect that the best power systems have to get right is what I'll call the skill tree. This is where you get lightning bending, the blue flames, and metal bending from in Avatar. Characters unlock new skills by gaining a deeper understanding of themselves, their element, and the wider world. For example, Iroh figured out how to bend lightning by thinking and moving like a waterbender. Always remember that these special skills are add-ons. It's not like you have to go back and retcon how bending works in your head. Your understanding of bending that you got all the way back in episode 1 stays the same all the way up to the finale. It's just that people introduce new ways to think about and use it. All of these more advanced techniques also have a cost for their users. Bloodbending and stealing water is sort of demoralizing to Katara, though that might be a personal issue for her. Lightning is also incredibly volatile. You get it wrong or hesitate while channeling it even for a second, and it starts to hurt you, as we saw with Aang vs. Ozai. Metal bending isn't as dangerous to the user, but it requires a great amount of focus. It's good for Toph because her sight isn't there to distract her. She's able to focus on the pieces of earth inside the metal and bend them. Again, she's not bending the metal itself. All these techniques are also unique, and not everyone can use them, nor use them together. I'll give you another example. Nobody except Azula can generate blue fire, and this stays consistent all the way past Korra. I'd say Azula is the firebender with the greatest understanding of the element out of everyone in the Avatar universe. I know there's a new movie coming out, so if we do get any scenes with her, I hope there's at least some dialogue or something that shows her thoughts on the element. Maybe she can teach blue flames to Zuko while she's locked up or something. I don't really know. I do hope they never give her a redemption arc either. Some characters need to stay evil, even if you sympathize with them. And if Uncle Iroh says you're too far gone, it's never been more over for you in your life. This also plays back into the final Agni Kai, which is the best fight in all of Avatar and, again, one of the best fights in fiction. Zuko uses stances and stuff from other elements, things he probably picked up during his time with the gang. You can see him using earthbending, and what really helps him win is that breakdancing thing we saw him do at the very start of the show in the first Agni Kai. The Last Airbender is full of incredible setups and payoffs like that, and everything connects back to this one power system of bending the elements. In case you're wondering why I haven't separated bending and put it into its own box for this discussion, it's because I can't. And that, in my opinion, is a good thing. It's a sign of an excellent world and excellent world building. Another great aspect to this that other impressive power systems may not share is that bending specifically affects the world and the world affects it back. People use it for transport like earthbenders, and some elements are useless in certain environments, or you have to get really creative to actually use them. For example, Katara can't do much in the desert, and there's also the case where she had to use her own sweat to get out of a wooden cell. Because bending the elements is a common thing in Avatar, things were just built around knowing people could do it. Earthbenders use their skills to transport people, arrest them, and so on. The architecture of each nation and the attitudes of its people, or the nation itself as a geopolitical force, is also directly connected to bending. Like the Fire Nation is the most industrialized, you could say. They have warships powered by coal and heat, which are probably also powered by benders, feeding power into the ships. You have the earthbenders, who are walled off, very rooted and secure, sure, but also stagnant, and they also refuse to acknowledge the war and the changing situation outside their walls. There are flaws to each personality type for each element. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. Ba Sing Se never changes because earthbenders never give way, they stand. The other thing is the airbenders. They are very high up because their people have the ability to basically glide around. They're up on top of mountains, on spires, and so on. Their architecture reflects them. And then you have the waterbenders, being surrounded by water, being able to use ice. They probably used ice to create their little houses and structures and stuff. Again, everything in Avatar is connected. Nothing is disconnected. You can't talk about bending, this power system, without bringing in something else from somewhere to add to the discussion. And I think that's great. This part is going to be unrelated, or at least less related, to the discussion of bending as a power system and a writing tool, but there are a few other things that have the potential to be expanded on even now, and they come from back when Aang met Guru Pathik. Pathik seems to be from outside the Four Nations. He's clearly inspired by Indian culture, which makes him stand out a lot when you compare him to the East Asian-inspired Four Nations. So, I think that there's tons of things to be explored in Avatar's world, or on its planet. There's also the nature of the Avatar state itself. Legend of Korra has a wildly different interpretation of things with Rava and all that, so I'm gonna ignore that for the sake of making this interesting. In The Last Airbender, at least, the Avatar state is connected to the chakras, which the writers could also expand on. That entire sequence is very interesting because it's not really like anything else going on. That whole thing, the big giant Aang, it felt like it was the Avatar state itself, or whatever powered it. Maybe the spirit of Avatar's Earth. That's what I thought when I first saw it. I also know that the Avatar reincarnates and has past lives, we all know that. But my question is, what is the thing that these people are avatars for? I'm going off of memory here, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be the spirit of the Earth, or of nature itself, which is why it constantly pushes the Avatar to seek balance between the elements. Because Aang's overarching mission was exactly that. It wasn't just to defeat Ozai, it was to bring balance to the world by doing that. So, if Bryke or the team wants to make things real interesting, they could delve into the other places on Avatar's Earth, or you could introduce other martial arts styles that align with the overall feeling of each element. For example, earthbending is supposed to be rooted and with very deep traditional stances, so if you want to shake things up, you could introduce some kind of Okinawan karate style with similar characteristics in another far-off land. This differentiation is something that I think The Legend of Korra lost. Everything ended up looking like some form of kickboxing. I did really like the modernization aspect, but there are still other martial arts that would still make the elements easily recognizable. For example, firebending you could have kept as that kickboxing style. Airbending could have been something like pure boxing to keep the be the leaf philosophy. Waterbending, I'm thinking, could be something like Aikido, where you use tendrils to move people around. And earthbending could be Muay Boran, or something that looks very rooted, looks very hard style. There's lots of space to explore there that wouldn't make everything look generic. Or, a cleaner option would just be to get rid of all of that and bring back the Kung Fu stuff, keep it the way it was, because it worked perfectly. Breik, if you guys are listening, put me in the writer's room, put me on the team. Something else to think about is, again, how the modernization of the Avatar world ended up looking. The nations united and all, but I think each nation could have modernized in a very, very different way to look even more distinct than they did in the original series. Because again, Avatar's world is one where a lot of people can directly affect the environment. I don't think they'd even need to modernize that much. They wouldn't need to go in the same direction as us here on our Earth, because they probably wouldn't need as much tech as we in the real world do. Again, even these hypotheticals rely on understanding bending and using it in the writing, which is why it's such a good system. So now to basically end this video, I'm just gonna go on a tangent about my favorite things in Avatar. Number 1, shout out to the Fire Nation for having the best outfits ever. Zuko's Season 3 outfit is really cool. I could never really vibe with the airbenders in general. I wasn't a fan of the tattoos, and I think that their attitude as a force in the world of Avatar is a bit too passive. Maybe that's kind of the intention, maybe that was Breik's intention, but you know, I still think that the best airbender was Zahir, because his robes were cool, he had a very aggressive style, and I think that's also part of the reason why he was one of the best villains in Korra and why a lot of people like him. It's because he's so different as an airbender. He stands out a lot compared to the general culture of airbending, while still having an understanding of it. I've already talked about the final Agni Kai a lot, but I do want to reinforce how much I love it. It really is one of the best pieces of Western animation ever. It's pure visual storytelling, it's got a haunting soundtrack, there's basically no dialogue once it starts, which I think highlights the focus of both Zuko and Azula in that moment. Speaking of Korra, again, I didn't want to bash it too much. Certainly people out there are better at doing that than I am, but I do think that Korra could have at least worked better as a short DLC to The Last Airbender. I'm pretty sure that that's what they wanted to do with it originally, because it was clear that the further they went, especially with Book 2, they were making stuff up as they went along. I actually saw the Season 1 finale of Korra live back when it was airing, so that's pretty cool. Oh, and another thing is that Water Tribe has the best girls, and I still think Korra is one of the greatest female character designs ever. Speaking of crushes in Avatar, I've never met a Mai fan either. You know what? This is a Bender neighborhood, non-Benders keep moving. Why would you actually pick a fight with, they could pull a Madara Uchiha on you in 2 seconds if they don't like what you're saying. Though I did really like the whole baton thing they had going on, the night vision and stuff. That was really cool. The Equalists had potential to be full-on antagonists for the entire run. You know what would be crazy? Imagine if Amon was Zahir. Insane. Nuts. Breik, hire me. I hope this video gets a lot of engagement because I do want to talk about Avatar a lot more. I think there's space to talk about the clothing, the nations themselves, maybe even rewrite Legend of Korra with changes to the world building, how it looks, the events that go on, stuff like that. Because one thing I especially dislike is the upcoming series that may or may not be stuck in development hell, which is supposed to be post-apocalyptic. Post-apocalyptic or cyberpunk does not fit with Avatar at all. I mean, this is a world where the people who live in it can bend it to their wills. There's no need for industrialization in the first place, or not as much as we'd think. I did like Republic City as a location, it was cool, but you could take a lot of stuff, like the cars, out of Korra while still keeping the base idea. And I think they could have expanded Season 1 into its own show. They had triads and stuff going on, but I don't think they ever expanded on that specific part of things. I'll leave that for another video, I think. So for the comments, let me know what you think of Last Airbender, what you think of Legend of Korra, who your favorite characters are, best nation, best girl, what element you'd choose in real life, and what element you'd be given, which is an interesting thing because they're two different things. basically just go ahead and talk about the shows. By the way, the upcoming movies' character designs for the adult gang are great. I do wonder if we're going to see Toph reach into the more hard-style, power-based stuff and mix more of that into her personal style, since she's apparently really jacked now. Also, what is some of the craziest stuff you could do with the Four Elements? Like, if Avatar could go all out with its age rating, what could they show on screen? And I'm not just talking about combat, I mean, what could you do in terms of just using it in daily life? How could you shape the world, move around, vehicles, stuff like that? So yeah, go ahead, talk about Avatar, why Last Airbender is one of the greatest shows ever made, your thoughts on the live-action Shyamalan film as well, go ahead and talk about that. Did you guys know I saw that? The trailer for it, and the film itself, both in cinemas? Crazy experience. Since I remember the original trailer setting up a very different picture. Crazy experience. I'm not gonna lie though, I thought that the more detailed Airbender tattoos they gave Aang, or Ong in that version, were a pretty good idea. I liked that rendition of the tattoos. Anyways, yeah, go ahead, just talk in the comments. I want to see what you guys talk about. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.